Okay, 6:30, we'll call the Clerk of the Board of Supervisors, meeting order.
Tweed Schuman,
Here.
Stacy Hessel, Jason Weaver, Mark Helwig, Tom Duffy, Marshall Savitsky, Brian Bissonette,
Here.
Michael Maestri,
Here.
Chris Rusk, John Righeimer, Ron Kinsley, Ron Buckholz, Ed Peters. Full house.
Awesome. Let the record indicate we have a quorum. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the
Republic
which
which
stands one nation,
one
indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, Madam Clerk, certification of compliance with open meetings law, please.
This meeting has been noticed to the public and news media as required by section 19.84 of the Wisconsin statutes.
And Alex, who do we all have on Zoom, please?
We have Michael Maestri, Brian Bissonette, Sherry Beckman, Tom Jewell, Jay Kozlowski, and Michael.
Okay, thank you. All right, number 5, meeting agenda has been presented. We'll move on to number 6, public comment. I have 2 people that have signed up for public comment. We'll start with Linda Zellmer, please.
Linda Zillmer, 902 Holly Hill Lane, Birchwood, Wisconsin, Edgewater property owner. And I'm going to address in public comments 3 agenda items, 10, 17, and 16, which is the way your proposed policy change is going to read going forward, that people will have to speak during public comment and can't speak on agenda items. And I think that's reasonable for county board, with the exception of if you have a rezoning and you might have an applicant and neighbors and that maybe you would want to recognize people then. But I think at a committee level, to keep the rules that you have in place now, because that's when people might first be hearing information and will want to either add to or correct what's being said. And so I would encourage the committee to please encourage the county board to keep committee participation, public comment available throughout the meeting, and not just worded as the discretion of the chair of the committee. The second item was about item number 10. I think that is a question that's worthy of going to referendum, because in the change of eliminating the coroner and creating the medical examiner, I don't know that the county has really looked at why it has not been successful in being able to get candidates to run for coroner. And a medical examiner, as I understood from committee discussion, reports to the sheriff's office. So you're taking away an elected double check position and putting it under a sheriff's position. And I think that's worth a public vote. And then finally, the last thing is Muni Code, which has been, I know, an item that Tom Hoff worked on when he started, and it's been going on for a long time. But under state statute 660103, parent 1, before you act a code of ordinance, a copy has to be available for public inspection not less than 2 weeks before it's enacted. Now, I know that the code is supposed to just represent ordinances that have been adopted up until a certain point, and that maybe there's some zoning ordinances that aren't in there that will be added later. But I think it warrants public attention. Minor changes were discovered at admin, and there has really been no full discussion, not even an agenda item in the zoning committee, and the bulk of the code of ordinances have to do with zoning. So I would please ask that you I'll put some kind of notice out for the public to have a chance to look over the draft and then set it for action in your next month. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. All right, next I have a Kathy LaRue, please. State your name and address, ma'am.
Kathy LaRue, 16201 Jolly Fisherman Road, Hayward. Need anything else?
That's perfect.
I'm from the Sawyer County Snowmobile and ATV Alliance. I'm not a good public speaker, so bear with me. I'm here to talk about a future agenda item, the Public Works ATV ordinance draft. First, a little bit about the Alliance. We are a nonprofit volunteer organization comprised of 10 different clubs. Each club is made up of business owners and community members. We hold a county contract to maintain the trail system. An estimated 140 club members donate well over 6,000 hours each year to help maintain the trails. In addition, our officers and committee members spend countless hours on management, accounting, fundraising, and promotion. Plus, we service the public by working on their route and trail requests and resolving complaints. Our volunteers are busier every year due to rapid ATV growth, and this is not going away. The county and townships would need to hire many people to provide the same public services that our volunteers are doing for free. We feel that our contributions to the trail system directly enhances the economic value that motorized sports brings to Sawyer County. Not only are we a stakeholder in this draft, we are one of the key stakeholders. Imagine it like a flow chart. At the very top would be Sawyer County, below that Public Works, below that would be the Highway Department, and below all of that would be the Alliance. Those 4 entities service all of our county residents. Below those would be all the townships and the reservation. Not that they're any less important, but if you remove a township or even a couple of them, nothing changes. But if you remove one of the top 4 entities, you're going to have a problem. The ordinance process, we feel, was handled backwards. We are named in the draft as a responsible party, but we're not made a partner in its development. We were not consulted or asked for our input, even though we are experts in the ATV field. Instead, it was drafted and sent out for review, and since we've been dealing with backlash, some town board members are using this as an opportunity to further their own personal agendas against motorized sports. One example, a town committee chair emailed this ordinance draft not once, but twice to a large non-motorized group, asking them to immediately comment to the Highway Department or Public Works Committee, and they're not even a stakeholder. We are disturbed by this, along with some other negative behaviors we've seen, and wonder if it will be allowed to influence the outcome of this ordinance.
Okay, can you wrap it up, Kathy, please?
Yep. This process has put the Alliance on the defense, and as a key stakeholder, we hope that our response will carry to this draft will carry the weight we deserve. We feel it deserves. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Very well said. Okay, Alex, anybody online for public comment?
I don't have any answer.
Okay, thank you. All right, moving on to number 7, consider approval of our meeting minutes, August 18, 2022. Mr. Duffy.
I so move.
Okay, motion by Mr. Duffy, second by Mr. Hellwig to approve our meeting minutes of August 18, 2022 as presented. Is there any further discussion? If not, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Okay, number 8, Mr. Alvarado, we've got some appointments for the Sawyer County Board of Appeals and Sawyer County Housing Authority Board.
Yes, the Sawyer County Board of Appeals are reappointments of the current members. These were forwarded from the zoning office, recommending appointment of Laura Rusk as a member and Gordon Christians as the first alternate to 3-year terms.
To the Sawyer County Board of, okay, Mr. Schleter, Mr. Buckholz.
I'll make a motion to approve Laura Rusk, member, and Gordy Christensen as an alternate.
Okay, and I've got a second by Mr. Schleter. Is there any further discussion? In discussion, Andy, these are 3-year terms?
Correct.
Okay. If not, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries. Letter B, Sawyer County Housing Authority Board of Commissioners.
Yes, this was received from the Sawyer County Housing Authority. They have an individual who is leaving their Board of Commissioners, and we make 2 appointments to the Housing Authority, county board members, but the rest of the members are generated by the Housing Authority, but by statute, the county board has to approve the appointment. And so they have requested the appointment of Roberto Escamilla II, who has volunteered to fill the term of a departing member. This particular appointment, they point out, is filled by somebody that is a resident of the Housing Authority and involved with the Housing Choice Voucher Program, as is the member who is departing.
Wonderful. And Roberto's with us, correct? Okay. Mr. Schleter, you can. Motion by Mr. Schleter. Okay, second by Mr. Weaver to approve the appointment of Roberto Escamilla as our Sawyer County Housing Authority Board of Commissioner. Is there any further discussion? Yes, Ms. Hessel.
Who draws up the draft for nomination? Like if you're a candidate, who draws that up? Is that the housing authority or is that our county board?
The Housing Authority.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Is there any further discussion on the motion? If not, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Congrats, Roberto. Okay, number 9, zoning committee. Zoning committee chair report. Mr. Betcher.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, the zoning committee held its public hearing on August 19th. We had one rezone request application in which the committee unanimously recommends approval. We also held public hearings and voted on 3 conditional use permits, approving 2 and denying 1. Our next meeting is tomorrow morning, right here at 8:30. Pending your questions, I will turn it over to Mr. Kozlowski, who is with us virtually tonight.
Okay, Jay?
Yes, the first rezone case we have is rezone number 22-010, owner Terrence Pettit. This is located in the town of Winter, part of the southeast one quarter of the southeast one quarter, section 8, township 38 north, range 5 west, parcel 0325388084401. Property is zoned agricultural 1 and is 30 total acres. The request is to rezone 2.4 acres of the 30-acre parcel from agricultural 1 to RR2. The A1 zone district requirements would need a minimum of 5 acres. Thus, the zone district change is being requested. The Town of Winter's comprehensive plan map shows this area as being for future residential with a mixing of zone districts between Ag 1, residential recreational 2, and residential recreational 1 with similar uses occurring. The anticipated lot is shown as part of the attachments there in your packet. There were 4 opinion letters sent out to property owners within 300 feet. 1 was returned, no objections. Town Board approved the request on August 10th, and at the Sawyer County Zoning Committee public hearing on August 19th, 2022, it was recommended for approval to the County Board of a vote of 5-0.
Okay, Mr. Kinsley. Motion by Mr. Kinsley to approve the resolution. Ms. Hessel?
I think Ron was up first.
Oh, I'm sorry. Mr. Buckholz.
I'll second that
Okay,
motion.
motion by Mr. Kinsley, second by Mr. Buckholz to approve the resolution rezone number 22-010. Is there any further discussion? If not, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Mr. Betcher, do you have anything further, sir?
No, that completes my report.
Thank you. All right, number 10, Public Safety Committee Chair Report. Mr. Buckholz.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, before I give my report, I would like to have the sheriff address the board so we can get an update on what's happening in the sheriff's department.
Absolutely. Welcome, Sheriff.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman and fellow board members. I did present before Public Safety and Finance some concerns and want to keep the full board in the loop as well as some further things have transpired. Our biggest concern right now is staffing. In the past, we've always had 3, 4, 5 part-timers in each division working part-time. And when there was a vacancy, we always had the ability to promote within from our part-time staff. In the last year or 2, that's dwindled down to minimal to no part-time. Now, in our patrol division, we are full staff with the full-timers, with only several part-timers working for other agencies in law enforcement full-time. We have no other part-time on our roster in the patrol division. In dispatch, out of 7 dispatchers, we're down 2 full-time positions. We do not have anybody fully trained in dispatch on our part-time roster to fill either of the full-time positions. We have acquired a few applications And these applicants we've interviewed and are job shadowing and getting them started if they continue to be interested in the training process. In the jail division, we have 14 jail positions. We are down 4 full-time positions with nobody part-time. Out of the 4 vacancies, we're down to 4 full-time females. That's minimum DOC requirements met to house our full-timers or to house our female inmates. In 4 weeks, 2 of the 4 females we have are going to be on maternity leave. We have made arrangements to ship all of our female inmates out to surrounding counties. By October 14th, we will have all of our females out of county. This is definitely unprecedented times. I, along with our administration, are at our wits' end. I do thank our county administrator and HR. They have been very helpful. We've kept them in the loop, trying to make things function. I did receive a letter or an email from the judge earlier this week expressing concern because it has furthered some complication for the court process, and that complicated process has just begun, especially with our females and more housing out of county as well. We're also going to be in a situation where our road deputies are going to be the ones transporting out of county without us having females in the jail as jailers. If we arrest a female on a mandatory arrest, they are going to have to be booked in and then transported out of county. We are transporting our females primarily to Barron County, so we're probably looking at a 2 to 3 hour downtime in a patrol shift just with that arrest and transport for that female inmate. I know we're going to get through this, but we've kind of exhausted every thought we can and open it up to the board and others. If we're missing something or somebody else has a suggestion, we are open. We don't know what else to do. I have an obligation by statute, the Constitution, to keep the peace, serve the court, and administrate the jail, and we're doing our best. And I can tell you, especially in the jail division, our staff is spent. The biggest concern we're dealing with and why we're losing jailers right now is they are tired of being forced in. And it's that we're at a pivotal point where it's going to really spiral, I'm afraid. We are going to open it up here. We're going to start training on a volunteer basis our road deputies to come in extra and work in the jail so that we're not putting such a load and burden on our jailers. It has become that critical with our jail staff.
And they will be paid overtime, right?
They would be paid overtime.
Chairman
Yes.
Buckholz, are you entertaining questions, or can we not ask questions at this time?
I'm okay. I wish you would ask questions, but it would be also up to.
Yeah,
Mr.
absolutely, Ms. Hissel.
Okay. Do you see that nobody's applying, or is it a pay issue? I mean, why are we down?
It depends on who you ask what the issue is, and I encourage our administrator to chime in here. We've kept him in the loop, and he's as knowledgeable as anybody, and I know our finance director has been involved in this too. You know, if you ask our staff, you know, they're very adamant talking to friends and others who they're trying to encourage to apply. It's pay competing with the private sector. You know, when you're dealing with LP and Arkland paying in the mid to upper 20s, and we start our jailers at $20.86. You know, I think pay is probably an issue. I think part of the issue additionally is we're short of bodies in the workforce. I mean, look at the restaurants that don't have their restaurant lobbies open and everything else. I mean, we're not alone. Whether it's in government or the private sector, it's all over. We have you know, our elders better off financially, working and retiring at a younger age. I think we're dealing with a lot of issues from all angles here that add to the shortage of workforce. But I'll be the first to tell you, I'm not an expert on why that is. I can tell you, we're there.
Sheriff, what is the budget impact of housing out of county? All these prisoners?
We house out of county at $43 a day. It is not, as it may appear, to be additional, because with the less staff, we do have a few less staff members. So it's probably going to be a budget impact, and I'm just guessing. I haven't studied that number. Do you want to comment?
Yeah, and I should say, up to this point, we've already been housing a fair number of inmates outside the county without being able to reduce the staff. So, I mean, from a budget standpoint, and this is just in the budget, I mean, we can move other numbers around, but we're already at double what we had budgeted for out-of-county placements as of right now. And it'll accelerate, but we'll be able to reduce some of the staffing. Because it's not just the cost, the $43 a day is the cost to house. And we are having some significant transport costs that are added into that to get them to where those other jails.
Right.
The other thing I'll add, we're doing our best to manage it on the other side. When we ship the females out, we are going to be able to ship more males, bring more males back into our facility. So it's not just an additional, right now we have 25 to 30 females consistently that we're going to house out of county. We hopefully will be able to bring 15, 20 males back. But it is going to be an increase in number that we have housed out of county.
Sure. And then there's court dates you have to address, right?
Court issues, and additionally, you know, we met with Becky with Justice Point today. That's going to add another complication in that process. Working with Justice Point and dealing with our programs and everything else that involves. Diversion.
Okay, thank you, Sheriff.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Buckles?
Yes, I know, Chief Sedera had a report where they are still 2 full-time positions short in dispatching. And, let's see here. A written report was provided by Mr. Butcher, reported on the newer vehicle that he got. And August was a busy animal control month. He started working with the zoning and public health duties. He has applied for funding for the national animal training for training purposes. And the coroner report is, I'm going to leave that because that's on the agenda farther down. So I'm not going to talk about that, Mr. Chairman. So that ends my report for now.
All right, so we do have an action item here. Do you, Mr. Alvarado, are you going to handle that, sir? Eliminating the office of coroner, medical examiner. Go ahead, sir.
So this is a conversation that started a couple months ago. When the current coroner, John Frummel, let us know that he was not going to be running for re-election. There were no candidates that filed to run by the deadline. Since that time, there was one registered write-in. During that time frame, we started to talk about the options at coroner. I brought forward the option of eliminating the office of the coroner and switching to a medical examiner, which is allowed by statute, by a resolution of the county board. In your packet, there are some items to reference to that effect. One is a state map that shows you where the state is as far as coroners versus medical examiners. Definitely the trend over the last number of years has been county switching to a medical examiner for the reasons of difficulty in getting people to run, the higher, I don't say burden, but the level of work in the coroner's office or medical examiner's office. It gives the counties the ability to hire somebody for the position that is qualified, or it's a position, it's effectively another department head, but you can base your decision on who to hire based on their qualifications or capabilities of doing the job. And that's the other document attached that outlines the duties of the position and what they're expected to do with more death investigations, more drug issues, insurance, more autopsies. It's just, in general, statewide, they're seeing a higher expectation on what that office performs. And so that's why I brought that forward to the committee. They opted to bring this to the board with a recommendation to switch to a medical examiner. At this time, the resolution referenced a compensation model. We left it the same as what you had approved what the county board had approved this spring prior to coroner's papers going out for compensation, that being the $2,500 base salary and then the pay per investigation and an hourly rate for work outside of the death investigations, and a $2 per hour on call for the ME or the deputy ME. That is, I think, one of the issues also with getting somebody to run for coroner, or we heard that from the current coroner, that compensation was part of the issue. Putting forward what was already approved as the compensation, but that might be something that has to be changed down the road in order to attract somebody to do the job. And that's, again, evidenced in other counties with coroners and medical examiners, that there's just, how much you're going to compensate somebody for that job has an effect on the quality of the candidate you're going to get. But once you have it as your position, you can make those changes. Whereas a coroner, you're locked into what the compensation is when you set it for the term of for the entire term.
So Andy, the medical examiner then is accepted by state statute?
Yep.
Correct? And is it an elected position or appointed?
It's appointed.
Appointed.
It's like a department head, where in a county administrator county, we would appoint, or I'd recommend an appointment to the board for approval, just like we would for another department head position.
Mr. Helwig.
Is there any state assistance on the compensation?
No, there's not. There is, I should point out, there's a recommendation or advising of the qualifications for the position, but there is no, you have to have this degree or have specific licensure to be a coroner or a medical examiner.
Ms. Hessel.
Were you finished? I'm sorry.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
When you were talking about, reference, have you talked to any of the funeral homes or the funeral directors to find out, what they prefer? I know that they have a working relationship, obviously, with the coroner. So I didn't know if that was a situation where we asked them their opinion.
I have not.
Okay.
Mr. Duffy.
I'm wondering, have you had any estimate on the financial impact on the budget?
As of right now, we're approaching it with no impact, because it's the same, we're put forward the position with the same compensation as what we had set for the coroner already. I'm not going to sell this though on the fact that we're going to be able to stick to that, but this will be a money savings. I honestly think if you were to keep it as a coroner, at some point, you're going to see the cost for that go up. If for nothing else, then there's more autopsy costs that are occurring. So the budget has already been going up for coroner because of that.
Mr. Betcher.
Yeah, Mr. Alvarado, I understand, statute allows us to do this, to get rid of the coroner and have an ME, but can we do that with a simple majority vote, or does it need to be a super majority?
Simple majority vote as far as yeah.
Okay, so Mr. Buckles, we have a resolution in front of us, correct? Which is an
Yep.
action
But
item.
I want to add to what Mr. Alvarado was saying, that we had the input from our coroner now on the position of coroner or medical examiner. And I believe he was suggesting that we go to the medical examiner. Is that right, Andy?
That's correct.
So Mr. Buckholz, Public Safety then approved this resolution and moved it on to the full county board.
Full
Ms.
county
Hessel.
board.
Mr. Buckholz, can you explain why he suggested the change of coroner to medical examiner?
Andy could probably explain that better.
I think it was in part it's become more complex. And the duties are a little more, and I think the compensation, the time involved to do these cases, he felt to be better as a medical examiner.
Okay, so pleasure of the board here. We have a resolution to eliminate the elective office of coroner and create a medical examiner position. Looking for a motion to approve. Okay, Mr. Weaver? Motion by Mr. Weaver to approve, Mr. Schleter. Second by Mr. Schleter. Is there any further discussion?
Can I request the, sorry, can I request a roll call vote on this?
You can. Okay, is there any further discussion on the motion? Mr. Hellwig?
Now, the medical examiner, will they be doing autopsies or?
They would-
We'll still be having to send over to Minneapolis.
Yeah, they will still be sent out. They would order their autopsy. They would not perform the autopsy.
And is there more duties involved with the medical examiner than the coroner?
What was that?
Are there more duties involved?
From a practical standpoint, no, they're nearly identical. There are some things in the statute that are applied to the coroner, like the coroner in the absence of the sheriff is the sheriff. So I mean, that's in the statute. That would not go with the medical examiner.
Okay, Mr. Bissonette or Mr. Maestri, do you have anything to add?
No, I'm good.
No, I don't.
Okay. All right, so we got a motion by Mr. Weaver, second by Mr. Schleter to approve the resolution to eliminate the elective office of coroner and create a medical examiner position. And we have a roll call vote requested. So if there's no further discussion, Madam Clerk.
Mr. Savitsky,
Yes.
Mr. Maestri,
Approve.
Mr. Righeimer,
Yes.
Mr. Kinsley,
Yes.
Mr. Buckholz,
Yes.
Mr. Weaver,
Yes.
Mr. Hellwig,
Yes.
Mr. Schuman,
Yes.
Ms. Hessel,
Yes.
Mr. Schleter,
Yes.
Mr. Betcher,
Yes.
Mr. Duffy.
Yes. Wait.
Oh. Oh, okay, Mr. Betcher.
Good. Okay,
Let me.
Mr. Batcher votes no.
Okay, let me.
Mr. Duffy, yes,
catch up.
correct? Okay. You got that, madam?
Yep, and Mr. Duffy voted yes, correct?
Correct.
Okay, Mr. Rusk,
Yes.
Mr. Bissonette,
Yes.
and Mr. Peters.
Yes.
Okay, one
Okay.
day.
Motion carries. Thank you. And let's see, anything else then, Mr. Buckholz from Public Safety?
No.
Thank you. And thank you, Sheriff, for that comment, sir. Okay, moving on then to number 11, Public Works Committee Chair Report. Mr. Kinsley.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Maintenance Department is doing a good job. They constantly are meeting with Myron, keep things rolling forward. I think they do a nice job. Out at the airport, it's been busy. They're still finishing up their remodeling, and they're starting to get contracts for snow plowing that's coming up. The Highway Department's still out trying to mow the roadsides. We're shorthanded, so it's not all getting done. And the ATV, UTV routes ordinance is coming up in October. Everybody's welcome to make contributions to our administrator or our highway commissioner. We're open for suggestions. We don't know that it's gonna be finalized in October, but it's gonna be on the agenda for October.
And Mr. Kinsley, does our ATV Snowmobile Alliance report to Public Works?
Yes, when there's things there, yes.
Got it. Okay,
They also.
Ms. Hessel.
Economic development still will be. Sorry, thank you. They also report to economic development. So do we hear that then in October before it goes to Public Works?
You meet before us in October, so I guess it'll be yes.
Okay, thank you.
great.
And courtroom remodel, we meet bi-weekly and the contingency still at around 300,000, so we're doing quite well. And they're making progress. They're hoping to have the building enclosed by snowfall, and at some point we'll set up a tour to go through the building prior to a county court meeting to take a look.
Wonderful. Okay, any questions? Yes. Ms. Hessel.
Was it voted in Public Works to move the Veterans Office and the other offices from the county over to 63? Or
Oasis.
to that building? I was just wondering why it didn't come to a full board vote.
I believe that's this administration decision to do that kind of stuff. we were abreast of it. We knew that was going on at Public Works.
Oh, okay.
Okay, anything else for Public Works and Mr. Kinsley? Mr. Bissonette or Mr. Maestri? Nope, okay.
No, I don't.
All right, thank you, Mr. Kinsley. Moving on to number 12, Land, Water, Forest Resource Committee. Mr. Betcher.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, the committee held its monthly meeting on Wednesday, September 7th. Timber sales are back on track with several new sales in August. Timber sale value on contract that's yet uncut is at around 4.9 million. Some county land sales will now be featured on the Wisconsin online auction, reaching a bigger audience and potentially higher prices. The DNR has identified that Callahan Lake Dam is in need of repairs, so we will be hearing about that more in the future.
Okay.
We went in the closed session twice, but no action was taken. And then the Trail Alliance purchased more trail counters and is pursuing options for additional trailside picnic areas and restrooms. And there was some discussion regarding the tribal governing board's discordant ambitions to restrict the ATV and UTV access on tribal lands. Pending your questions, that completes my report.
Any discussion, Mr. Betcher, on carbon credits?
It was brought up briefly that we are going to have it on the agenda for October. So I can add though, if it seems like there has been a slight delay, it's because we are reaching out to other vendors. So we weren't just sole sourcing with Blue Source. And that will be discussed, but it looks like, the other potential vendors are probably going to fall through. So we're back to one, but we've done our due diligence, I would say. So we're going to probably move forward.
Super. Anything for Mr. Betcher and Land Water? Okay, if not, number 13, Health and Human Services Board Chair Report, Mr. Schleter.
Thank you. We had the Health and Human Services Board on September 6th of this month. We received reports from all of from the administration, as well as the departments inside Health and Human Services. Discussion regarding Sawyer County Resource Center. The board decided that they would request, and that request is met positively, that the Resource Center send them monthly informational statements about number of meals prepared and delivered, congregate meals, cost of those meals, average donation income for those meals per month, so that the Health and Human Services Board can also keep track of what's going on and learn more about it. In addition to that, we have a resolution to consider here, designating an intoxicated driver assessment facility to do those assessments. I want to turn it over to Andy now.
Yeah.
Yes, during the course of the Human Services meeting, this came up as a somewhat timely matter. By statute, the county board has to have an intoxicated driver program in our geography. And through that, part of that is designating an intoxicated driver assessment facility. Up to this point, it's been our Health and Human Services Department. Technically, it's the Sawyer County Health and Human Services / Information and Referral Center. They've been the designated assessment facility. At the state level, the state DHS code 75 is being replaced by 7515. They're updating the code, and the certification that we were operating under is no longer eligible. So we'll have to be recertified under 7515. Still the same referral center, still the same process, but the county board had to designate the Human Services Department prior as our assessment facility, and it has to be reappointed under the new 7515 certification, which is the reason for the resolution.
Perfect.
So essentially housekeeping.
Yep, I was just gonna say that. Okay, so we have a resolution in front of us. Resolution 2022 designating an intoxicated driver assessment facility to our own Health and Human Services Department, correct? Okay, Mr. Betcher.
Yes, I'll make a motion to approve the resolution.
Okay. Mr. Buckles?
I'll second that motion.
Okay, motion by Mr. Betcher, second by Mr. Buckles to approve resolution 2022 designating an intoxicated driver assessment facility with our Health and Human Services Department. Is there any further discussion? Brian or Mr. Maestri?
No.
No. If not, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Okay, anything else, Mr. Schluter?
No, we're done. That concludes.
Okay. All right, moving on then, number 14, Finance Committee. Finance Committee Chair Report, Mr. Kinsley.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We try to touch on a lot of things. We try to keep abreast of the American Rescue Act funds. We get a treasurer's report. We received a report from the ambulance revenues and expenses because we moved to LifeQuest. So we want to stay abreast of that. We talked briefly about the carbon credits. We talked about the sheriff department budget. We had the sheriff at the meeting. He told us generally the same thing you heard tonight. So to bring it to our concerns, and we went over the preliminary budget, which we have a packet, and we have the honor of having our county accountant here tonight to go over that.
Okay, Mr. Markern? And do we also, Mr. Chairman, do we have negotiations coming up with our only union remaining in the county?
And we're still waiting for a date with that. We'll check with the administrator.
Yeah, all of our September dates have been rejected and now we're working on dates in October.
Okay. All right, Mr. Markern.
All right, well,
Thank
thank
you,
you for
sir.
having me. I
Yeah.
do apologize for just getting the packet to you tonight, but with me being new, I'm really trying to triple check everything before I put it forward. And the actual revenue limit worksheet didn't come out until Friday, and actually just yesterday, we got our shared revenue estimate, so I'm trying to update things as we go, and I wanted to get the best information to you that I could.
Thank you.
So some of the highlights for this year, first of all, I want to say all the departments were great as far as bringing their budget requests forward, and there wasn't, and it's not like there's fluff in there. They all did their due diligence to bring forward what they really need for their operations to work. So I really appreciated that. Our net new construction came in at 1.169, which is the highest it's been in the 13 years that I could find history of. So that's encouraging. It's about $120,000 in new money just from that. Sales tax continues to grow, and that's been strong, and the trend should continue. One thing I want to highlight, and I'm assuming you've been made abreast of it before, but typically this time of year, we look at our capital improvement plan. Bond council has recommended, and those sheets that I'm assuming you've seen before that show the trajectory for the next few years, he's recommending, instead of doing a CIP in December for next year, to wait until whatever bond issue we need to finish courthouse in March. So that's a little deviation from the plan in the past. But it does make sense. And if we did add that, it would deviate from what you've already seen, and it would increase the taxes beyond what the plan has been. So it would require change to do that. There are 6 levy limit exemptions. First one, bridge culvert construction repair. We've always used that one. Countywide EMS, we've used that in the past. Payments to public libraries, we've used that in the past as well. And then obviously payments to general obligation debt we've used. There are 2 that we have left unused. One of them, admin will be recommended that we take advantage of this year, which would be property and casualty insurance exemption. And then the other one, which we're not recommending yet, is court ordered placements can be outside the levy as well. So if we ever get in a bind, that's something that we would have in the future. As a point of reference, our general fund balance is just under 8 million as of December 31st of 21. The board policy says to keep between 20 and 30% of general fund expenditures. As you can see by the numbers there, we're well above that. Any questions so far?
I have a question.
Oh, I'm sorry, yes.
Sure, question.
Mr. Righeimer.
Thank you. On the exemptions to the levy, how does that come about? Like, so for instance, the library is getting more than, how does that, they request it, or how does that, why, I guess is the question.
Well, even the statutory amount for libraries is above the levy limit worksheet. So that part's already above. Anything you choose to give above that would also be above that as well.
And that amount is, how much is it above? Is it 78,000? Am I reading that right?
I do. I can touch on it briefly. Anything that's outside of the county, we're paying the statutory amount. The LCO, we're paying the statutory. The only two that we're going above are the one in Hayward in town here and the Winter Library. Winter, their statutory amount is under 2,000. It's 1997, and we're giving them over 78,000 is what they're requesting. We did 75 last year, and then the Hayward Library is statutorily would be about 121,000. They're requesting 210, probably recommending 200.
So that's so about 80 grand roughly.
Yep. Okay. Well, between the two, it's more like 155.
155. And the only reason I bring it up, and I'll leave it at this, is, I mean, when you hear the law enforcement issues, you know, I don't know if every stone needs to be unturned about where money's being spent. And frankly, I'd rather have less library, more police, if that becomes the case. Now, I'm not sure 100,000 makes a difference to the sheriff's department, but 100,000 here, 100,000 there, after a while adds up to real money. So that's my only point. Thank you.
The only thing I'll say to that is, since libraries outside the limit, you can't really transfer that 150,000 from there to the sheriff, because the sheriff falls within that levy limit. So whatever you didn't spend on libraries would just be gone. We couldn't.
Say 100,000 would just evaporate or goes?
We couldn't redesignate it, no.
Right. It would just lower the taxes.
Correct.
And these, good question, Mr. Righeimer. Mike, these things are outside or exempt to the levy limit because of state statutes or things like?
Yep.
Yeah. So you had some big advocating going on. Okay, go ahead. I'm sorry. Yeah.
All right. This next graph just shows the Sawyer County valuation, are the blue bars. So you can see, you know, it took a little dip and then now we're back up actually at higher than it was before the dip. And then the little orange line is the net new construction. So you can see there's been an upward trend for quite some time on that overall, other than a dip last year. And again, this is our highest amount we've had in the past 13 years. So that's encouraging. It's actually, and Andy and I were talking about this earlier today, it's pretty remarkable to have that high of a number. And you're going to see this later when our overall evaluation went up a lot. So to get to the 1.17 while the actual base is really rising is pretty remarkable. All right, so highlighting some of the budget requests, you can see we did make quite an adjustment to our emergency services. That was after some study of area counties and that we weren't quite keeping up. We did move a half-time custodian to full-time, and then there are some budget requests to clean up some maintenance items that haven't been kept up. So just a little increase in budget there. Same with information technology. There are some upgrades to systems as well as some of our security. You hear about hackers a lot. This would help discourage that, or if it happened, we would be able to catch it better. And then the sheriff's budget is asking for some increases too, which you can see laid out there. And so it's probably more than we've seen in the past. It was my first year, but I don't think that's probably the amount you've seen typically in the past. So the next page shows what the fund balance draw would need to be. Like, the revenues I've gone through over and over, and those are, I feel, pretty close to what the final numbers will be. The expense side is what we're still working on as an admin team to see what we can do. But if we did nothing right now, the fund balance draw needed would be 2.2 million. This year's budget, you have, I believe, just under 1.3 or 1.4 million for a draw. We're not going to need that. Revenues are up from budget. We typically try to budget revenues conservatively, and I don't want to say worst case scenario on expenses, but definitely on the higher end, then so that we don't come up short. So between those two, we're not going to draw near that 1.4, and the hope would be whatever we decide for this year would be the same situation. But because of conservatively budgeting that's revenues and keeping expenses up, like we're fully budgeting positions we haven't had filled in quite some time.
Right.
But our hope is eventually we get these filled too.
Mike, what are you budgeting for sales tax? Because last year we had a surplus,
Yep.
a huge surplus, and it looks like we're headed that way again this year.
Yeah.
So are you conservative with that too?
It is. This year we budgeted 2.2. We're probably going to hit 2.8 if the trend continues. I kind of did up a little spreadsheet looking at the past 3 years and then forecasting that forward. And then like literally a week later, the state came out with something very similar, and they matched pretty close. So hopefully that'll hit. And then next year projection would be more towards 2.8. We budgeted 2.6. So again, trying to be conservative in case something happens.
Mr. Chair.
Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Kinsley. Yes.
The people have been on the board for quite a while. If you look at that adjustments, healthcare at 5% instead of 10, how many years we fought to get it down to 10? And now we're 5. I think that's a super job on administration that we have.
And we're not happy with that. We are going to fight that because we've had really good loss ratios the past 2 years
All right.
now at this point. So we're still working on it.
But you're also considering employee retention too, right? You're not raising the deductible or raising their
We're
premium.
not making any plan design changes at all.
Okay.
It's just working our carrier.
Good.
And then looking at the requests, we're planning on putting 2 of the 4 sheriff positions in there. If more money comes available, we'd like to fund them all. Right now, it's looking like we can do 2 out of the 4. And then the other thing admin would be proposing is taking advantage of that levy limit exemption for some of the insurances. So again, it will reduce the burden on the general fund by allowing us to levy that amount outside of the limit, which would bring us down to about 1.6. And as I mentioned, we're continually looking at other expenses we can take a look at. So, and then next is the partner organizations, which we've kind of talked about a little bit already. The one thing I want to point out, anything with an asterisk does come within that general fund levy limit, which is this worksheet that I did on Monday. And anything that does not have the asterisk is outside of that. So that library discussion, yes, we're going above our statutory requirement, but it does not affect the general fund. We can't take money from that and put it somewhere else. I guess I was off of my numbers, 122, but you can see that there's significant difference between the formula and what they've requested. The request came in at 912,000, which is quite a bit over this year. We have, as admin, taken a look at some of these and would recommend some changes from that. Basically, the biggest ones would be that the Hayward Library, we had always done $200,000. Well, not always, but for the past few years. Last year, they had a donor who said if the county matched 10,000, they would give 10,000 to increase salaries. There's no paperwork or contract on that or anything. I reached out to the library and she's going to try to see if there is anything or if they're willing to sign anything. So at this point, without a given match, I don't know that we would recommend doing our end of it without a guarantee that they would match that. The Senior Center requested quite a jump. That 185 from this year also includes a pass-through grant that we get of about $80,000. Our contribution directly from the budget is 105. So they requested to go up to 226. A lot of that is due to, if you're in a grocery store, you know, it costs more to pay for something that you did a year ago. So a lot of it is due to that. That is quite a big jump though, so we'd kind of like to meet a little bit in the middle there. Nemacogan Transit is another one that asked for quite a big jump. They have not had an increase, I believe, since we started partnering with them. So I wouldn't mind giving them something, but 25,000 with everything else that we have for requests seemed like a lot.
Yeah.
And everything else is pretty much on par with what it's been. One thing I'd point out with the fair, that's kind of a two-level funding. 35,000 is their basic ask and 10,000 is capital. They have not turned in receipts for capital in 2 or 3 years. So while we budget the 45, they haven't actually requested that much. So, any questions on the partner organization?
So the extra ask, I know it can't go to the sheriff's department. Can it go, could it be intermingled amongst that group? So, no.
Because the libraries are the only ones that are out of that group that are outside of the operating.
So I'm not anti-library. I'm saying if you took it away from the library, you couldn't put it towards the senior center.
No. Okay. No, senior center comes within the levy limit.
Okay. Thank you.
I love that you're thinking.
Yeah, man, I'm reaching, I guess.
Appreciate that, John. Yes, Mr. Howard.
And we're going to continue funding the Economic Development Corporation at 25,000.
That's their ask, so that's ultimately up to you guys.
Thank you.
Anything else for on this page?
All right, so preliminary revenues. If I'm taking too much time, let me know.
No,
my
this is
first
good.
one.
This is really good, Mike.
The proposed taxes would go up quite a bit. That's also including sales tax in there too, so that's not all the property tax levy. But between the amount we're allowed to increase and the emergency services, which is outside, and the debt service as well, that would go up. The rest are pretty much staying the same. I want to, well, other than other financing sources, that's the bond issues and ARPA money. I want to point out miscellaneous. It looks like a lot of money to be miscellaneous, $1 million. Almost all of that is kind of interfund transfers, the biggest one being indirect costs. So there is a stipulation where we can pool all of kind of our central costs, maintenance, administration, accounting, all of that stuff. And we can allocate it out to the different departments. And the reason we do that is we can get grant money from HHS. We can levy it with ambulance, and we can get grant money with child support. So we'd be leaving money on the table to not do that indirect allocation. So that's why we do that. So it's an artificial revenue really, because we're charging them to those, but then we also give them the offsetting revenue. So that's why that's there.
Mike, is the opioid money part of this revenue stream?
I don't have it in there yet,
Okay.
but yes, it will be.
Because we've gotten one payment, right, of
We
20-some
have,
thousand, and another one coming, Andy? Before the end of the year.
Yeah.
Okay.
I haven't put it in yet because of, I mean, we haven't really decided if we're going to take the lump sum or take the
Got it.
payments, but we'll have to make a decision pretty quick, I suppose. Well, although it's just the budget. It's not that it locks us in either. So no, that part is not in there yet. On the expenditure side, this is the request. So it's a big number. We haven't made any of the adjustments of what we would or wouldn't recommend. So that's all of the, oh, next slide.
Yeah.
Sorry about that.
There you go.
So sheriff and emergency services are both in there. Those are two of the bigger increases for the request. So that's why that's up quite a bit. The rest of them are pretty similar. Highway and human services are similar. Debt service is up because now we are paying for the courthouse bond issue. Our first payments will come next year. The capital would be that second issue if we chose to do it for the courthouse, and then other includes the ARPA money. So one thing you're going to notice when we look at revenues versus expenditures, there's a deficit this year. And that is because we issued the bonds last year for the courthouse, but half the construction or more is going to actually be. So there are two ways to do it. You can actually do a fund balance transfer into 2023. I think that artificially inflates revenues when you look at it year to year. So I'm hoping you guys are okay with over the course of the 2 years, it's kind of level out. So that's how I've always done it before with bond issues in my school life. So when you look at it over the course of the construction, it all evens out, but it'll look funny for a couple of years when the expenses don't follow the revenues. And then the operating tax levy, which is actually the revenue limit worksheet. Just quickly take you through that. The general fund, health and human services, and highway department are basic, and actually those littler ones are basically that 1.17 increase that we're allowed. And then the debt service is increasing for the payments, and the actually that's it. So that comprises the operating levy. It's just a minimal increase over last year, really, other than the debt service. Then the special purpose revenue, these are the ones that are above the levy limit. So you see, again, you're going to see all the libraries, you're going to see emergency services, both their operating and their capital, which would be every year we purchase new ambulance and equip it. That's what that is. And again, the bridge aid that we talked about. This was kind of a plug figure. Our final number is actually really close. It's $99,645. So it's about $355 less than what was budgeted. And then I plugged in the property and casualty insurance to come up with the levy. And then the valuation, you can see, went up quite a bit. The levy rate will actually decrease. What we would propose would be 3.15. If the board decided not to do that exemption for the insurance, it would go down to 3.10. It'll be 5 cents per thousand to take advantage of that exemption.
Huge. Mike, where does the money come from for the dam repair that Mr. Betcher is mentioning? Don't you have a dam that needs repair?
Yes, that comes in the capital improvement plan.
So that wouldn't be in the levy limit exemptions because you have bridge and culvert construction repair. We can't add dams in there as well?
No, the bridge and culverts are a statutory thing. We are able to do the dam repairs through capital improvement and issuing debt. So it's an exemption that way, but it's a different kind of exemption.
Even if we built a bridge that also held back water?
I like how you're thinking.
I do too. I like.
You gotta be creative.
Actually, culvert, there is, big part of the dam discussions. There are some dams that we have that are essentially culverts, but the culvert is specific to culverts under.
Maybe if you could figure out a way to build a dam with culverts. Sideways. All right, any questions on that? Then this final sheet is just a kind of history of our tax levy rate.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, so by not doing the short-term lending for capital improvements, we're keeping it at 3.6 or the 3.1.
No, that's where it's going down. It's the tax rate would be 3.15. The levy rate would be decreasing by 3.6%. 3.61.
You're still gonna end up doing the borrowing.
Right.
That's just be next year.
Yeah.
The bond issue after the standalone.
All right, any final questions?
No?
I have
Anybody?
one.
I'm sorry.
So on the
Yes.
2023 operating tax level, you said, pretty much everything went up. I think you said like 2 or 3%. And I noticed everything is going up for 2023, except land and water conservation is actually going down considerably, over $12,000 from 58,000 to 46,000. Do you know why that is?
They enter their own budget. So, I don't know if they're doing fewer projects, but that's what they requested.
Mike, Mr. Schluter had a question here.
Yes.
Hayward Lakes, I see you left that request the same. But they brought in a lot more money last year than they did the year before that through their room tax revenue. Why can't we lower that? They have promised us, it's a long history. And they had.
I have a short history with it though.
But at one time, they had actually promised us if we gave them this amount and this amount, then they wouldn't need to come to us again. That's gone by the wayside because the board voted differently to go ahead and fund them. But I'm still curious, did you look at their financial
I did,
statements?
yeah.
And how much did their revenue increase over the last budget?
Yeah, I mean, I believe they're getting about 200,000 from the room tax.
And what was it? What was the revenue the year before?
I'd have to look at
Okay. Those revenues have been greatly increasing because more of the townships signed on to the room tax rate. And I don't think they need that 50,000 this year. And again, it's only 50,000, but like has been said, 50,000 here and 50,000 there.
it all adds up.
Yeah.
Okay, Mr. Helwig.
I just want to go right along the same lines there that, wasn't it 60,000 their room tax last year, something like that?
So it
So
was more than that.
was it more than that?
What the misunderstanding was shortly after the budget was approved, they got a big chunk of money.
Right.
So it wasn't.
I know, there was quite a few actually of us, and I
Whether
think
it
I
was
was one of them
600,000
that
or
fought for more
800,000,
money,
I
but
don't remember.
if their revenue is going up as much as it is, I agree, maybe cut that in half.
Put that, please.
Um,
The slide we're talking about.
Are you asking?
It's the
Okay.
operating levy slide.
Oh,
Or no, not that one. You went too far. There we go.
There, okay. All right, Ms. Hessel.
With all due respect, he's just presenting what was given to him. This is his first year. So like you talking about history and talking about last year, they presented the information. We were all emailed that information to look at. So I don't think that this is the time or place to
Oh,
get
I
into
think it is,
that.
Ms. Hessel. We're in
It is.
discussion over the
It
budget,
certainly
so.
is.
But this is a preliminary and you're asking him questions
And we
about things that
discussed
he's not
over-
even here for.
And we'd already discussed other organizations. so I
And
don't see why
supervisors
this
can
is
ask
any
questions.
different.
Well, I'm just stating that with all due respect to him, he's just presenting what they, so you were, in my opinion, you were telling him your disagreement with what he's presenting, but he's just presenting what they supplied to him as a request. So he has no opinion with it. He's just presenting what's supplied.
Which is fine.
Never intended to
That's, you can adjust Mike.
disrespect.
No, none taken.
Mike, I
Okay.
never intended to disrespect you. I
No.
was asking questions.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And I kind of resent the implication.
Okay, Mr. Alvarado?
Yeah,
Welcome
just
back.
when Mike's prepared the budget and we've taken in those requests, I don't want to lead anybody to believe that we just put in there what they gave us either. mean, we've gone through all the requests, looked at their budget, also looked at the track record for those organizations as to how the votes at the budget meeting have gone to kind of get a feel for what the board has done in the past. And, so it's kind of a balancing act, but I think we do want to hear what the board has to say about some of these. I mean, some of the departments, we've jockeyed with them or questioned some of their expenditures and adjusted their numbers. As Mike pointed out when he went through the partner organizations, the library asked for 210, we put it at 200 because that 10, we learned that the 10,000 last year was added on as part of the matching grant that may not be available this year. Same thing with Namakagon Transit. They requested 175. We actually started with 175, and I think Mike put it down to 155 after taking a closer look. And potentially, if they want to explain the need for additional matching funds, we would reconsider that. But we're putting together a preliminary document. You'll get a kind of our version of it to do what you want with at the public hearing next month.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, what is the timeline, Mike, for the budget then? I know we have a public hearing in October. Okay,
And we'll have to publish the budget as it is early October to get it in the paper for 2 weeks before the hearing. There can still be changes after that, and then the final budget becomes yours, and then I have to publish that by December 15th.
okay. So can we put the budget on all the committee agendas then, coming up in October? This will be their shot at it and bring to finance in October, right? And to the public hearing. Okay.
Ron had his light on.
Want to do more, sir?
No, if everybody's done it, I just want to commend these two gentlemen for doing an absolute fantastic
Yeah,
job of putting
amen.
this together. In their first year, Mike's only been here since July, and Andy's doesn't have a whole year. I think they did a wonderful job. Very
Right.
minimal questions they brought to me. I think they did a good job of digging in. Thank you.
I would agree. Okay, anything else? Mike, do you want to add anything else? I mean,
That's all I've got.
oh, I'm sorry.
That's
Ms.
cool.
Hessel.
I just had a question. So can you remind the new board members how the county is funded? It's on sales tax and property tax, correct? I mean, how are we funded?
We get several grants as well.
Okay. But if our sales tax increases, that's a good thing. That means more tourists are here. That means that there's more local spending. So that it's a good thing.
It means there's more local spending. Yes.
Yeah, okay.
I don't want to say it's all tourism, but obviously Hayward's a touristic area, so a lot of it is.
Super. All right. Anything else for Mike or Andy or Mr. Kinsley with the finance committee? Nope. Brian or Mr. Maestri, do you have anything you want to add?
No, not at this time. I don't.
Okay.
Not at this time either.
Okay. Thank you,
All right,
Mr. Marker. Appreciate it. Mr. Kinsley, do you have anything else, sir? Thank you. All right, number 15, Economic Development, UW Extension, Chair Report. Mr. Duffy.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We met on September 6th, and I have a short report. We first of all heard from Hayward Lakes Visitor and Convention Bureau. They gave us a summer recap. They said the social media is very active this summer. They've got a fall website, Color Tour Reports, and they're now running that, and they update that twice each week. So that's pretty active. We heard from the libraries, both the Winter and the Hayward Library. And the Hayward Library has received a gift of a large sculpture of a bear and a Native American boy that will be installed in the future. We then reviewed the board policy and procedural manual, and with fewer changes, that was approved. We heard from the Motorized Trail Committee. They've purchased 3 trail counters. I have now a total of 6. We're trying to restart the Bicycle Trail Committee, trying to find some board members that would get and want to be involved with that. Then next weekend is the Berkey Trail Run. There are 7 events, and the half marathon is the national championship. So there'll be a big crowd for that. And that, Mr. Chairman, completes my report.
Mr. Duffy, what's going on this weekend for a bike race today?
Bike race, yeah, that's going to be, well, you run that number of times. There's a Schwamigan running from Hayward up to Cable. And the numbers are the same. I think there's, I don't know how many there are. Berkey's not running that, but
2,800.
And they start on the main street and go to Nation Cable.
Thank you.
Yep. Those are big events for Hayward and Cable and, the Surrey County for sure. I'm sure
Okay.
Stacy, you want to add?
Anything for economic development?
I was just gonna say it starts at 10, so choose your route wisely around town.
Thank you.
That's a good point. All right, thank you, Mr. Duffy.
You're welcome.
All right, moving on to number 16, Municode update, discussion, possible action. Mr. Alvarado, we have a resolution here establishing our Municode of ordinances.
Yeah, I'll give you a little background and then maybe an additional comment in regards to process here. So the Muni Code was started, I believe, in 2021 under the prior administrator and legal counsel. When I started, it had not been adopted yet, and so the administrator and the attorney that had reviewed it are both not with the county or not with the firm anymore. So we essentially started over and reviewing it, making sure that all the adopted ordinances that are already in place were included, format was all right. Had some of the departments reviewed again to make sure their ordinances, again, that were already adopted were in there. And finally got to the point where we're confident that everything is in there. Nothing new since I've been here has been included in this. Municode is a company that we are working with to establish the code of ordinances or the book of ordinances. And then as the board approves new ordinances, they get sent to Municode for publication and inclusion in the big document and online. So we've not been sending them any updates until we had the initial version completed. So in the last month, we got that to the point where we were comfortable with it and took it to the admin committee to bring forward for approval. So what's in there is not any new ordinance. It's ordinances the board has already approved historically. And at some point, just it needs to be approved so that we can establish that as our code and then make updates as we go ahead. Now, I've been following up here on a comment that was made during public comment regarding the publication. So there is a code of ordinances, section of the statute 66.0103 that discusses the formation of a code of its ordinances. And in there, it does say that it should be made available for public inspection not less than 2 weeks before it is enacted. So I've been communicating with our council regarding whether we've met that. And, there's no requirement for publication or notification of the public that's available for inspection. So has it been available for inspection for 2 weeks? Yes. But in the interest of making sure that we don't, anybody that maybe didn't know it was available for inspection, Corp Council says we can. The safer start is to delay approval till next month if you would so choose.
Oh, all right.
So he doesn't see a problem
So
with it
we're
tonight. but-
advised by Corp Council.
Yep.
To possibly postpone till our October meeting so the public has time to review it.
Yep, or they're aware it's available for inspection.
Okay. Pleasure of the board. Mr. Buckholz.
I make a motion to approve the postponement until our October meeting.
Okay, motion by Mr. Buckholz. Oh, second by Mr. Rusk to postpone our Municode resolution establishing code of ordinances. Postpone until our October county board meeting, correct, Mr. Buckholz?
Yes.
Okay. Is there any further discussion? If not, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. All right, number 17. Lynn will have that on the October agenda. Thank you. Number 17, County Board Plans and Policy Revisions, Discussion and Possible Action. We have a resolution updating Sawyer County Board of Supervisors Policy and Procedure Manual. Mr. Alvarado.
Yeah, there's two items under number 17. One is the Code of Ethics resolution and draft, and the other is the board policy and procedures. So the ethics was something that was developed in the last couple of months. There is a code of ethics already in the county board policies and procedures, and there's a section in the employee manual regarding code of ethics. Both, I think, were lacking. They outlined what would be a violation of the code of ethics, but did not do anything to go into much detail as to process to bring a complaint forward, how the complaint would be adjudicated, how would the parties be notified, timelines for acting on a complaint. So the draft code that we put together is in your packet, has been through the admin committee a couple months, goes into greater detail on all of that. It has the statement of policy, defines the terminology, outlines the conduct that would be a violation of the code of ethics or an ethical violation. Just, I think, expands upon that to a greater detail. The code is applicable to all employees and officials. We would not have two separate codes. It's all, everybody falls under the same one. And then it also goes into the administration of how a complaint is made, where it's made to, what do the contents of the complaint need to include. Once the complaint's received, what's the timeline for a hearing, and how is who the complaint is about notified, and then how are decisions notified as well? What are the violations and penalties? And also the ability to get advisory opinions in advance of an ethics complaint if somebody is questioning whether or not an action or something is going to be above board, essentially. So that policy is there, the admin committee's recommendation for approval by the board.
Okay, Mr. Betcher.
I'll make a motion to approve the ethics resolution as described by Mr. Alvarado.
Thank you, Mr. Betcher. Second by Mr. Peters. Motion by Mr. Betcher, second by Mr. Peters to approve the resolution 2022 adopting our code of ethics procedure. Is there any further discussion? If not, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Okay, Mr. Alvarado. Now the resolution updating the Sawyer County Board of Supervisors Policy and Procedure Manual.
Yep. Similarly, this, I guess, started back when the organizational meeting was held in April for the county board. There were some things that came up where we looked at the policy manual, and there were some things that were not accurate or unclear. So we started to make those updates, and then it snowballed from there, looking at some additional language. As already has been mentioned, the public comment, completing out the committee responsibilities, adding in some clarifications as far as state statutes and how they apply to your board rules. There's a number of changes in there. The document that you're looking at is a version that shows the additions in blue and the omissions in red for the changes that are being made. And again, this has been through the committee. All committees had the chance to update their sections. Board members commented on policy in general, and then it went through the admin committee a couple times with updates, and now it's coming to the board for recommended for approval.
Okay, Mr. Kinsley. Okay, Mr. Duffy. Motion by Mr. Kinsley, second by Mr. Duffy to approve the resolution updating Sawyer County Board of Supervisors Policy and Procedure Manual. In discussion, Mr. Betcher.
Yeah, so I read through this, and there's a few errors still, or maybe things that can be clarified. So I don't know if, I'm just concerned that if we vote and approve this, then it's going to be more difficult to change that in the future. It's going to have to go through an amendment process with a whole nother resolution just to change like a typo. And then, there is.
You can amend it on the floor right now if you want. If
So
it's a simple typo.
before I do that, let me ask a question. So currently there's an amendment/addition log that annotates every amendment since 2016. So tonight, if this gets approved, you're talking about over a dozen amendments or changes. Will each of those have to be listed, or will there just be one bullet point saying on this day that, an amendment was made to?
Yeah, due to the level of additions, we'll probably summarize them. Not each of them highlighted.
So then I'm a little bit, I'm not sure how to proceed then with an amendment to this resolution if there's several, and a couple of them, like I said, are just, wording. So maybe I should just focus on the one that I am most concerned with. So, Mr. Chairman, do I need to state?
I
that
got a
I'm-
motion and a second on the floor, but you can make an amendment. We would vote on that first.
And I have to say what the amendment is?
You should. Yep.
can I talk about what it is first instead of?
Sure. You have the floor.
So on February 18th, 2021, we made an amendment to Rule 113, which talks about if a vacancy occurs on the board. And there was an amendment introduced and passed that changed that. And some history with that is, at the time, 20% of our board was appointed. They were not elected. And one of those members served for 18 or 19 months as an appointed position in what is otherwise an elected position. So there was an amendment made or a resolution passed that changed that said that that position, if it becomes vacant, cannot be in abeyance for indefinite periods. So we put 30 days on it. And so I see here it's been changed to arbitrarily to 90 days. So there's potential that that position could be open for 3 months. But then all of the other verbiage about holding a special election, if that person is going to be there for more than a year, has been stricken. So the concern is if right after the election, like this past April, right after the election, if one of the members would have died or resigned or moved, and then a new person is appointed there, they would be in that elected position as an appointed supervisor for 2 years. So that's the history behind that. So at this time, I would then like to make an amendment to the current motion that says that we keep that verbiage in there that says if somebody is appointed and it's going to be for more than a year, and the dates are written in there, that we hold a special election to fill that position.
Okay, a motion on the floor, an amendment to the original motion to approve. Do you have the language, Madam Clerk? Amended to include the deleted language. You want to include all that language, Mr. Betcher?
I want to.
That's in red?
I want to leave it as is, as it originally was before it was stricken through with red.
It's Rule 1, number 3.
Rule 1.3. So our main motion has been amended to,
Retain the deleted language prior to revision
in Rule 1,
in Rule 1.
subsection 3.
Yes.
Okay. Okay, I got a motion on the floor. I need a second. Mr. Howie? Second. Motion by Mr. Betcher, second by Mr. Howie, to amend the original motion as read by the Madam Clerk, Rule 1, Section 3. Everyone have that? Do you understand, Mr. Bissonnette and Mr. Maestri?
Yes. Yep.
Okay. All right, so we'll have a roll call motion. Roll call.
Comment, please.
Oh, in discussion. Yes, sir.
We talked about this at administrative committee meeting. And I know it was changed. And I was the vice chair for 10 years under Hal Howing. And I'll tell you what, sometimes when someone goes off the board for some unknown reason, and you have to find someone to get them back on the board, sometimes that can't be done in 30 days. One time, there was 3 people that were brought forward to be appointed on the county board. And at that time, we didn't feel any of them were worth having on the county board. So it took a long time to bring that person to fill that position. That's one scenario. Another scenario is, I'm not willing to have a special election because of the cost that goes out to the county and all the towns when we can have it appointed by the chair. That's my comments. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Schluter.
Actually, I was going to say much the same thing. Would we just hold a special election for that one district? Because that's the only people that would be voting for it. And does state law allow separate elections of that nature? And what would that cost? I can see a lot of stumbling blocks towards that actually taking place. I understand where you're coming from, and it makes sense. You want to have elected representatives for that district. Thank you.
Oh, yep, Ms. Hessel.
Can we ask the clerk how much, if that is proper, and how much it would cost?
Sure. Are you willing to reply?
To an extent, Mr. Alvarado can maybe follow up on this. Would it be possible then that during that circumstance, it goes on the next available election? Because there's likely up to 4 elections a year. So I don't see a reason for a special election. I think it would just go on the next February, April, August, or November election. So I don't see an additional cost.
Okay.
And Mr. Alvarado,
Do you
is
care
that
to comment?
correct?
I honestly don't, I mean, there'd be minimal cost, like she said, if it's held with the next election. As far as a special election, I don't know what the cost would be.
Okay.
I can anticipate for a special election, if you held it in between those, it would be with one municipality and there would be programming fees and ballot fees and notifications. So I would say maybe I'm guessing at $2,000.
Yes.
That's true. That's true.
It's multiple townships, right?
Yes.
Some districts. All right, Mr. Bissonette and Mr. Maestri, we are in discussion of the motion to amend. Any discussion?
No, thank
Or we
you.
Move to a roll call vote.
Go ahead.
Okay. All right, Madam Clerk, roll call vote, and I might have you repeat the
Okay.
motion, please, to amend.
Mr. Betcher made a motion to amend the original motion and retain the deleted language prior to the revision in Rule 1.3.
That's it. Everybody understand? Okay, roll call vote, Madam Clerk.
Mr. Savitsky,
Yes.
Mr. Maestri,
Yes.
Mr. Righeimer,
Yes.
Mr. Kinsley,
No.
Mr. Buckles,
No.
Mr. Betcher,
Yes.
Mr. Schuman,
No.
Mr. Schleter,
No.
Ms. Hessel,
Yes.
Mr. Weaver,
No.
Mr. Hellwig,
Yes.
Mr. Duffy,
No.
Mr. Bissonette,
No.
Mr. Peters,
No.
Mr. Mace, sorry about that, Mr. I think I've got it. Mr. Rusk.
No.
Failed.
Failed. Okay, motion failed. So now we'll go back to the original motion. No, help me. Who did this? Mr. Kinsley moved. And Mr. Duffy second. The original motion to approve the resolution updating Sawyer County Board Supervisors Policy and Procedure Manual. Is there any discussion with the motion? Mr. Betcher.
Yes, Mr. Chairman. I don't know if this requires an amendment or not, but if, with your permission, I'd like to point out that in Rule 1, under board members, there's a little bit of possible ambiguity and confusion in that it says board members shall serve a 2-year term beginning and expiring at the convening of the organizational meeting on a third Tuesday in April. And then it says, goes on to say, with the term expiring as provided by law. So I'm just wondering why it says it begins and expires at the convening of the meeting, but then further down it says it expires with the term as provided by law. There could be ambiguity because I don't understand what it's saying.
You want to comment, Mr. Alvarado?
Yeah, I believe when the language is added at the end with the term expiring is provided by law, that should have required a deletion of and expiring in the first line.
So then my question is, so that makes sense. Now there's no ambiguity if the word expiring is stricken out of the first part. My question is, does that simple strike through or change require an amendment, Mr. Chairman?
Could the motion makers add that edit? Mr. Kinsley, Mr. Duff? Okay. Would you
Could you-
second that with the edit Mr. Betcher pointed out and Mr. Alvarado explained?
Could you repeat the
Strike and expiring out of Rule 1, number 2,
and expiring?
in the first sentence.
Okay. So the motion makers have added that edit that Madam Clerk has just explained.
And then with your permission, Mr. Chair, if we could potentially do the same thing with a typo in Rule 3, Section 3, where it uses the word case, C-A-S-E, which I believe is supposed to be cast, in referring to casting a vote.
Rule 3, Section 3,
Rule 3, Section 3, organizational meeting.
votes cast. See that edit? Mr. Kinsley, you good with that edit? Good catch. You got that, Madam Clerk?
Yes.
Rule 3, subsection 3. Instead of votes case, votes cast. Okay, so those two edits. Anything else, Mr. Betcher? That's very good. Okay, so I have a motion by Mr. Kinsley, second by Mr. Duffy to approve the resolution. I'll find it here, updating Sawyer County Board of Supervisors Policy and Procedure Manual with those edits shared by Mr. Betcher. Is there any further discussion? If not, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Okay, number 18, County Administrator's Report.
Just,
Mr. Alvarado.
before I get to the report, I want to make one comment about the ethics policy and the board policies. So we wanted to get these done and approved by the board as policies. Discussing this with the corp council and a little bit with the committee, our intent would probably, it's going to be to bring these back once we get the Muni Code adopted, so you can consider these for becoming ordinance as well. Not all policies of the county need to be ordinances, but these policies go directly to your home rule that you're organized under. And then if you look at the Muni Code in Chapter 2, it has the self-organization. It's pretty minimal. So there's a number of counties that take their board policies that we've just approved and codify them as an ordinance. So it requires some renumbering to fit in the ordinance. But now that these are adopted as policy, you're operating under them. You'll have, we'll bring these back as a proposed ordinance for you to consider doing that. Not required or have to, but good policy or good, that way they're transparent, they're made public, and then they're part of the ordinance that's enforceable, so.
Thank you, sir.
See, I guess the one thing I want to mention, it's not in my report, but like the sheriff said, we're far too familiar with each other of late, talking about the difficulties that we're having with staffing. So like he said, we have a number of things we've already talked about. We actually have another list of things we're going to give to the sheriff tomorrow. We'll just work through them this week as far as trying to cover some of the vacant shifts until we can increase staffing, some short-term things to do to increasing recruitment. So we are working on it. If it was as simple as just throwing more money at it, we would tell you that we just want to throw more money at it, but we're trying to be a little bit smarter than doing that. Like he said, our wages are not way out of the market compared to jails and dispatch, but it's the other thing that he pointed out is we're short on bodies, and it's a competitive local environment now that we're competing against. So we're trying to do some short-term things with the long view of how to solve the problem. And like was brought up, we do have negotiations coming up, and we do have money that Mike presented in the budget. We do have money plugged for addressing some wage issues. So all those things are in motion, are being addressed. Other just general updates, not a lot, but some corp council work. We're trying to manage that. We did have some items we had to refer to our mutual, our county mutual, and had a council appointed to us under our insurance policy. Those have all actually gone well, and we've got those items addressed. Like was already updated, the courthouse renovation is staying on schedule. We anticipate having it closed in before winter, and the east parking lot will be returned to service before winter as well. Everything's on a good timeline there. Our owner contingency fund has gone down a little bit. It's right around 320,000 right now. We hope that a lot of the expenses that would be unknown or extras are incurred during this period of the construction. There shouldn't be as much once it's closed in, so we're hopeful that stays true. Personnel wise, just one department head item to report that Nate Dunstan, who's our ambulance and emergency government director, did tender his resignation. The committee is aware of that. He's with us for a few more weeks. In the interim, we've appointed John Fremmel, who's a paramedic and also a coroner, to be the interim. We do have a job posting that's out now for the position, as Nate held it for ambulance and emergency government. And we've already seen some applications for that, so that'll be going through the hiring process in the next few weeks for that position. You'll be seeing something in the near future regarding a new tool that we're implementing. It's an anonymous hotline. With some of the things we've run into and some of the things I've experienced in my work history, people don't always want to speak out or speak up when they see things regarding fraud or HR issues or ethics. So we're putting a tool in place where people can put those complaints in online or to a 1-800 number, and then we get notified of those. Just, we want people to speak up, public and employees. So that's just hopefully something that'll encourage people to do that. Nothing new on the opioid settlement. CJCC's October meeting is pretty much dedicated to looking at some of the options for how to invest those funds. No update on the securitization of the opioid dollars, except that we'll have to either commit to do that or not commit. Probably by the end of the year. There's no deadline that they've given us, except to tell us that about the start of the fourth quarter or mid fourth quarter, they expect that to be ready for a decision. There was a Oasis building. We should see a move down there and get everything fully operational about the beginning of October. Some of the furniture was delivered today, so we're close to being able to make that move happen. And that's what I have.
Ms. Hessel.
Besides the Veterans Service Office, what else is going in that building?
ADRC.
Okay.
And there's one sign came in, it's up on the side of the building, and the sign for the road sign is ordered now. We'll take this up at Public Works, but one of the hesitations on ordering the road sign or paying for it is that we have a tenant in the east side of the building, the Journeys. And at this time, we're anticipating not using that other part of the other part of that space ourselves. So they've been included on the road sign. But
Mr. Hellwig.
Are we incurring any extra cost having those entities move down there?
Well, yes, because it was rented out before, so we were making revenue on both sides of the building. So there will be more of that expense that is on human services.
But we did tear down the Veterans Service Building, correct?
Correct.
Anything else for Mr. Alvarado, Brian, or Mr. Maestri?
No, thank you.
Okay. And Madam Clerk, what's going on this weekend? Is it Sunday, Monday, Tuesday?
Oh, the WCA conference in Wisconsin Dells.
Okay. All right. Correspondence, reports, conferences. If not, we are adjourned. Thank you, everyone.
Hey, everybody, Cranberry Fest, first week